Welcome to another crash course in Warframe. Today our focus is on the frame that has probably the biggest shoes to fill, Nova. Now this antimatter frame exists because it's science fiction, it's not real, okay? So all of her abilities tie into this antimatter theme by either manipulating matter, which is basically depleting enemy health or teleportation and such, or displacing the matter that is all the light being emitted from your screen that isn't bright ass white. That's right, I said it. Bring it on, noob physicist. Two things of note with this frame. She can cast any ability while airborne, which is a huge boon to her mobility. With great power comes, great responsibility. And in this case, it's the fact that 0 of her abilities give her even the slightest moments of invulnerability. Not to mention that she has 0 crowd control spells, but this doesn't mean that she doesn't have utility. On the contrary, her Wormhole ability alone is the best and only long-distance mass transport skill in the game, seconded maybe by Volt's crowd sprint. But that's a pretty distant second if I'm being honest. Now taking a look at the stats, you can see almost immediately that she's kind of at the bottom of the stack in terms of shields, but her health and armor value are on par with the running average amongst the frames. One of her biggest perks, however, is that she is the second fastest frame behind Loki, and the speed difference between the two is hardly noticeable. But don't think this is a get out of jail card and get cocky without a shield mod, because this game will remind you the importance of having a shield every chance it gets. Now, Null Star, Nova's first ability, is kind of interesting. You see, once you activate this ability, Nova deploys several antimatter snitches, if you will. And their sole purpose is to hang out with you until they spot danger. And once they do, they strike with the force of 1,000, like dust bunnies. Seriously, when you first start out, these things do damage equivalent to an asthmatic lung donor armed with a handful of spit wads and a coffee stirrer. Hell, even after you max them out, each individual snitch still seems to do negligible damage in the higher level missions. But look at how goddamn many I have. Look at it. And this thing sees in all directions. So it's going to snitch slap some health off a mob before you even see it. Also, it doesn't break stealth. I'm sure this is at best extremely situational, but that doesn't mean it isn't pretty fucking nifty. Next ability up is Antimatter Drop, and this chromatic dodgeball may come off as a bit wonky at first, but once you start to get the gist of it, you'll find that you command a goddamn Death Star nuke. Look at these numbers. Look at the spread on impact. I'm not even pushing it to its full potential. Some people are hitting 100K with this thing. See, the way it works is simple. Launch an orb, or 7 if you want, then you and your buddies and maybe a few enemies unload on it to build up a charge. Then fly that bitch until you find a seemingly hostile group of foreigners moving in on your territory, at which time you stealthily drop it into the mix and boom. Look at that. Loot, affinity, credits, energy orbs everywhere. Thanks, Obama. I knew you'd approve. Nova's third ability, Wormhole, is pretty simple. Strike the ability key, open a tear in the universe, and traverse space-time to instantly translocate to a remote destination. I mean, in the grander scheme of things, 50 meters really isn't that impressive a distance when space-time is involved. But you know, science fiction, okay? So I've already mentioned that Wormhole is the single greatest long-distance mass transportation system in the game, and I stick by that 100%. I mean, there's some troll factor here, right? Because who can resist stepping through a doorway into a parallel dimension that leads to who the fuck knows? No one can. People just can't resist the temptation. You place a door, they will go through it 60% of the time, every time. And mobs can enter it too, but it's a little bit different with them. I don't know if this is like a host thing or whatever, but whenever they enter it, like nothing comes out, like that they're gone. And that's pretty much, it's probably the most inefficient way to get rid of like 3 dudes per door. Okay, so every 75 energy or whatever, you're getting rid of 3. Here you go. Look at that. Boy, that was totally worth it, wasn't it? Last up, we have Molecular Prime, and I would actually qualify this as a half CC skill, kind of, because once activated, everything in the vicinity moves to what's called a primed state. And in this primed state, they do a number of things. First, it slows them down. Second, they take more damage. And third, when killed, they explode. And this is what makes this skill awesome, because anyone can trigger the explosion. And while the damage output from each detonation is good, it isn't until you factor in that exploding prime targets also take damage from neighboring exploding prime targets, and then those exploding prime targets detonate more prime targets. And while this all sounds like chaotic bliss, it apparently happens pretty fast, because all you get is a bright flash of blinding white lights and everything is dead and it's over. In closing, Nova, in my opinion, is right on par with Vauban in terms of varying creative mechanics on a single frame, but her frailness will definitely be a turnoff for, say, a former hardcore Rhino player. But for Ashe and Loki fans who refuse to give up the speed, this is definitely a frame for you. Also, I'd like to note that Wormhole is Nova's sleeper ability. Its cost will cause some to cast it aside early on, but this is not Vauban's bounce, where troll ability seems to be its only use. This thing has near endless utility, and once you've trained yourself to use it on impulse, you'll find yourself pulling off some pretty impressive combos. Now, if Nova is a frame that interests you, you'll be happy to know that her blueprints drop off an actual boss this time, and by the time you see this, I'm pretty sure the boss is actually showing up to fights now. So good luck, and I hope a frame whose specialty is playing with balls is everything you could have ever hoped it would be.
The outpost is clean. Proceed to extraction.